Meanwhile, China is strengthening its diplomatic ties with American adversaries. On Thursday, Chinese President Xi Jinping spoke with President Vladimir Putin of Russia on the phone, pledging to work together in defending their sovereignty, security, and development interests, according to Chinese state-run media. The two planning on doing joint drills soon. Joining me right now with reaction is former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. John, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Great to be with you, Maria.
Let me start and get your take on this classified documents investigation and what you heard from Special Counsel Robert Hur.
Well, Maria, I think that, contrary to the spin from the Biden White House and the media that's trying to help them, Joe Biden, I think the most important takeaway was not cleared of wrongdoing. The special counsel clearly found that Joe Biden broke the law, that Joe Biden broke the law repeatedly, that Joe Biden broke the law willfully, and that he broke the law knowingly, that he committed multiple felonies under multiple statutes, including the Espionage Act, that he met every element of those crimes. Now, where things kind of go astray is, despite all of those crimes, the special counsel, in this case, Robert Hur, pulled a Jim Comey. He essentially said, just as Jim Comey did with Hillary Clinton, that even though Joe Biden committed every element of every crime that he set forth, that he wasn't going to recommend charges for Joe Biden. And he offered two reasons for that. One of them is a legitimate consideration. The other one was not. The one that was not was he said, well, we're not going to charge him because he's cooperated. I think you and I have talked about this before, Maria. Cooperation is not a defense under the law. It's something that can only be taken into account by a judge at sentencing. It's as if, bank robbers don't get to return stolen property and not get charged because they cooperated with the government. The only legitimate basis for Robert Hur not to recommend charges is the non compos mentis defense, which is essentially that Joe Biden was too mentally infirmed to stand trial. The problem for that, of course, is it creates the catch-22 of if he's too mentally infirmed to stand trial, then how is he not too mentally infirmed to run the country? And so I think that that's going to cause political damage from now until Election Day for Joe Biden. But Maria, I think that this is actually going to have a significant legal impact, beyond the public's perception of a two-tiered system of justice, an actual impact on the same case and the same charges against Donald Trump. And the reason I say that, Maria, is if I'm the federal judge down in Florida looking at this, Judge Cannon, I'm thinking, why is this case even in my court? And the next time special counsel Jack Smith shows up in my courtroom, my question for him would be, look, I've got a 300-page report from another special counsel from the same Biden Justice Department who says that the target in that case, Mr. Biden himself, committed every element of every crime that's set forth in here, but the Department of Justice says we're not going to charge him. And yet here you are in my courtroom saying that it's a matter of national interest that we not only move forward with these charges, but that we absolutely do so before the November election. It just doesn't jive. And so I think that that's very likely what's going to happen here.
Well, we're also waiting on the Colorado decision in terms of taking Trump's name off the ballot. So we are basically relying on the Supreme Court for all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows the wisdom of the founders in setting up a system of checks and balances. Very clearly here, going back to, the Hur report, this is the Biden administration using the Justice Department to commit election interference. And I think the Supreme Court is seeing that, the state of Colorado with a completely Democratic Supreme Court following suit here with really just, arguments that don't make any sense under the 14th Amendment. I was heartened to hear all of the Supreme Court justices, the liberal ones and the conservative ones, really question the soundness of the state of Colorado's argument that somehow the state would have supremacy over a federal candidate and the ability to disqualify them. Chief Justice Roberts pointed out very quickly that, look, if we ruled in your favor, things are going to turn just the opposite, where red states are going to knock liberal candidates off of the ballot, and we'll have all chaos. But I think the most important thing was all of the liberal justices like Ketanji Brown and Kagan and even Sotomayor pushed back on this idea. where the 14th Amendment, where everyone knows that the history of the 14th Amendment, Maria, was to take power away from the states, and yet here's the state of Colorado saying it actually gave them more power, power over the federal government, and it just doesn't make any sense. And I think the Supreme Court will rule quickly on this, and I think they'll rule unanimously on this, that the state of Colorado will lose and President Trump will win.
And you're expecting that ruling to come within the next week or two?
I really think they have to move quickly. More states, Democratic blue states, are trying to knock Trump off the ballot. You have Super Tuesday come up. They really can't wait. I think that's why they're moving with urgency. They took this case. I'd be very surprised if they don't rule in favor of President Trump within the next week or two.
Let me get your take on what's going on in terms of the wide open border, which we've talked about so many times. We have a new report here that the Border Patrol chief warned Homeland Security Committee about the influx of Chinese migrants, saying that we believe we are letting in spies. Now, we know the numbers. I mean, the chart is incredible. Look at this chart in terms of what has happened on Joe Biden's watch. More than 24,000 Chinese migrants crossed the U.S. border illegally in fiscal year 2023. That's just 3 months. It started in October. And now we're talking about this revealing report that the border chiefs are worried that they are going to spy and create havoc in America. Also, once they are rejected for asylum, apparently China won't take them back. China says, no, we're not going to take them back. They're not even Chinese. A former assistant secretary of state told the Daily Mail that Beijing often denies that the migrants are indeed Chinese. So once they come here, they're not going back. They need to get to America. What are they trying to do here?
Yeah, well, Maria, let's put this in context. The Customs and Border Protection is telling us that the fastest growing group that they're encountering at the border is coming from our #1 geopolitical adversary, China. How fast is it coming? Well, at the end of the Trump administration, we had 342 Chinese nationals in the year 2020. As you pointed out, we're at now 24,000 and 20,000 in the past 2 years. That's like a 7,000% increase. And so you're right. It's not a question of whether the People's Republic of China and the CCP are sending spies over here, human intelligence assets into our country. It's a question of how many and what their purpose is. Are they here to run Chinese police stations? Are they here to conduct industrial espionage? Think about it, Maria. If the People's Republic of China said, look, our border is now open, I promise you the United States intelligence community would send as many human intelligence assets as we could into the borders of our geopolitical adversary as possible. But of course, China's not as dumb as the Biden administration. But that's exactly what's happening here. And it's a huge national security concern, of epic proportions.
I want to make sure that we show you what Trump said. He said, look, I did great with China, with everything. China came in. They were going to destroy the steel industry. And I put tariffs, big tariffs, 50 to 100%. He said, look, I want China to do great, but just like the sun rises, we lose $500 billion a year every year to China. And that continues today. Why is Joe Biden not doing anything about the threat of communist China? I'm talking about everything, not just the Chinese nationals coming across the border. The COVID cover-up, the police stations, the fentanyl, everything.
Yeah, again, our #1 political adversary, and he won't even call him an adversary. They call him a strategic competitor. And, as the director of national intelligence, I wrote an op-ed talking about why China is our #1 national security threat and how sinister and how nefarious everything they were doing at every level, all of the different things that you've talked about. And it's really inexplicable why Joe Biden has refused to confront China. Even on issues where 1 million Americans have died as a result of COVID, and China won't cooperate in the investigation to try and prevent that kind of a pandemic from ever happening again, to, spy balloons, you name it. Really, for the last 3 years, our #1 geopolitical adversary has been taking advantage of America and worsening our national security posture against them because of Joe Biden and because of his policies. I think you have to say it's in part because He's taken millions of dollars from China, as has members of his administration before they got in the White House. And there are all these questions still about the Biden family and the Biden family doing business with China and the leverage that they might have over him.
And, of course, then there's Iran. Iran having attacked our troops 170 times, John. Real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. China, Iran, all of our adversaries taking advantage of America and a weak commander-in-chief. And it's putting America in grave harm and our men and women in uniform at risk.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.